There we go.
All right.
And we are live. Cool. Hello, Internet.
Hey, Internet.
Guess what I've got for a theme song this week as a little teaser of what we are going to be talking about. Oh, boy.
Beauty.
Yeah,
Oh, we're going to get copyright struck.
that's probably okay.
We just talk over it. I thought maybe you were going to go for chunk, 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 chunk. But yeah, this is thematically appropriate.
The year 2000.
The year 2000. Anyway. We should probably fade that one down.
Okay. Yeah, we are talking about the Terminator movies.
Yes.
James Cameron's magnum opus.
Many
Plasma rifle opus of a dystopian future that is sending robots back in time to kill us.
Yep.
We both watched, I think, Terminator 2. Then I watched the first Terminator.
Same.
Did you watch the first? You watched the first Terminator, and then I watched because there's 3 more Terminators. I think I watched.
There may be more than that.
Well, there's some TV shows, and there's a game.
Are there? How many movies are they up to now? 5 or 6?
Okay. Terminator 2, Terminator 3, Rise of the Machines, Terminator Salvation, Terminator Genesis,
and Dark Fate.
Terminator Dark Fate. You're right. There is 6, and I watched Terminator I watched the first 4.
Yeah.
I didn't get around to Genesis or Dark Fate, although I watched Dark Fate at some point, and it was very forgettable, and I don't remember what happened in it.
Yeah.
What I remember was
that was Linda Hamilton came back.
They
right?
brought Linda Hamilton back, and
for that piece of shit movie. Man. She fired her agent. Jesus.
Man. Terminator 3 was pretty ludicrous. They went super absurd with it.
Yeah.
It almost won me over. It almost I was like, I'm trying to buy it. I'm trying to get on board with a little bit of the silliness of this and the fun they're having, because they're clearly having fun with it.
Sure.
It didn't quite win me over, but I will say Terminator Salvation, not bad. Maybe because that's the one that's set entirely in the dystopian future.
Yeah, and I've heard there talk about James Cameron talking about doing more Terminator, and whenever he's done with Avatar, or if he pawns it off on some other director. But yeah, I've heard him talking about how he doesn't want to do any more time travel. So I would assume it's more future kind of stories. Set after Judgment Day, but which is interesting to play around with, because I feel like they've done about as much with time travel as they could or should do. There's a real diminishing return with it.
Oh yeah,
you've seen over 6 movies.
It started getting silly with Terminator 3, and it started getting stupid with Genesis.
Yeah,
where they were trying to, I think, really kind of shake it up, maybe / even reboot it with Genesis, and Genesis was just, I couldn't even follow it. It was so dumb and convoluted, and John Connor was the bad guy now, and it was all I think the writers got really stoned and were just we're gonna figure it out, and they tried to, and it was pretty weak. But let's go back to the OG. The original.
Perfect movie.
Very, very, very good movie. Man, a realization I had watching it, I was like, okay, this can't be the first killer robot movie.
No.
And then I was trying to think, okay, what came before this? And it was Westworld, right? Westworld with Yul Brynner stalking through hallways.
Yeah.
Like a relentless guy going after rich fantasists, I guess.
Right.
And so I was trying to like kind of get into James Cameron's mind a little bit and be like, okay, like he saw Westworld, he's all like, I could do that. Let's like update that a little bit more.
Mhm.
But maybe instead of like rich people going to like fulfill Wild West orgy fantasies, maybe it's I don't know what's the honestly, the first Terminator kind of feels like a little bit of a Holocaust analogy. Like there's a certain Holocaustism to it where it's like tread crushed skulls,
Yeah.
laser marked arm numbers.
Mhm.
You know, they dress Schwarzenegger in like the motor, like the jack boots and the leathers, and like I, that's a little bit of a reach, I think, but it's there without a doubt.
Oh, I mean, when you get into like Terminator Salvation, where they're showing like what the robots are actually doing with people, and basically like throwing them in flying cattle cars. I mean, it's
Yeah,
pretty bold face underlined. Yes, we are making an Holocaust analogy here. But yeah, I was just curious, like, what was your? I mean, we were both pretty young. We were probably, when the first movie came out, I was 7. Yeah, 1984. And that
1984.
checks out.
I was 9 years old. I probably did not see it for a couple of years.
Yeah.
I do remember when Judgment Day came out.
Oh yeah.
Like that was 91, so I was 16, and everyone was just like, "Oh my god, this is the best movie ever."
Oh yeah. That was
Uh,
the opening day one. Yeah.
and I'm pretty sure I had seen Terminator before I saw Judgment Day, and I think it was probably just like a sleepover. I don't think I saw it in theaters, and it was such a cool concept, right? It was this idea of like a relentless killer robot back in time hunting you down, and like the final act when like it burns off the Schwarzenegger flesh and it's the animatronic robot coming out of the fire. Like it's such an amazing visual, and uh it had like wonderful like horror movie elements to it
Hmm.
of like the false ends. Oh, we destroyed the robot. No, it keeps coming. Oh, we destroyed the robot again. No, it's still coming.
Oh yeah. I
um
mean, it's Friday the 13th, except
yeah.
he's a robot instead of whatever the hell Jason is. Yeah, I had the unique experience of I think it was in summer camp whenever was that summer or the summer right after, because I think it came out in like November or something weird like that. It was not a big summer blockbuster movie.
Yeah.
But having one of the counselors, who's probably some high school or college guy, just expounding on the entire plot of the movie as we were walking to like the pool for our daily swim, just running down the entire movie for a bunch of like 8-year-olds.
Right.
I was like, yeah, and then the metal arm goes through like every plot point of it, and we're all just like, none of us are like, hey buddy, spoilers. We're just like, oh, that sounds so amazing.
That's crazy. I have the exact same memory, but the movie was Escape from New York,
Oh, nice.
where the camp counselor was like, "Oh, they injected poison in him, and it's going to kill him in 24 hours. But he's got to rescue the president." And we're all just sitting there going, "Like, oh my god, this is an amazing idea."
Camp counselors are underrated
Yeah.
gatekeepers to nerd culture.
So, yeah, I mean, there was just something so magical about that first movie where it was like sci-fi, it was horror, it was uh had some Holocaustism to it, had some hot sex in it, it had like the amazing police station attack, um, and here's another first that the movie had. They go into the Terminator vision, right? The like red hued,
Yes.
like this is what the Terminator's seeing. It's just like random code and stuff,
Heads
and
up
like
display.
things
Yeah.
or whatever. But like in a way, that was I think was like the very first person shooter imagery. Like you had the gun in frame, you're like moving through hallways and stuff, you're shooting people, and it's just like I actually was like, oh my god, like did Cameron kind of invent that as like imagery as kind of a medium, like that's so ubiquitous now to like see that. But when I was
Right.
watching Terminator, I was like, I don't think anyone had ever filmed anything like had filmed specifically that set of things together in that way.
I'm pretty sure Hitchcock did a movie that was all in first person, but
Really?
yeah, I think so. But it wasn't an action movie. I can't
Yeah.
remember what it was called, and I'm misremembering a lot. But yeah, I'm pretty sure he did one that was all in a first person shot, except, sometimes the guy looks in the mirror and you see who it is. But um, yeah, but for like action scenes like that, where you're seeing the Terminator's point of view as he's gunning down cops. Yeah, it's interesting. I hadn't really thought of that, but yeah, that is a kind of an innovative shooting style. And yeah, you definitely we're so used to it now from video
Oh
games.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's
It's like I said, it's ubiquitous. But like back
interesting.
then, I was trying to think, gosh, like to Jam Cameron, like have someone reach under the camera with a gun and like probably like you know pretend to shoot people.
Sure.
Couple other notes I had about the first movie. Um, I think this is the movie that taught everyone in the '80s how to hotwire cars. Like,
Yeah,
like it's all there on screen. Like he pulls it out, he pulls out the wires, he's doing it, he's starting the car.
and I guarantee you that was probably like accurate. Like,
Oh, sure, sure,
I mean,
sure. It looked legit to me. I was like, I bet I could hotwire a car after watching this.
Cameron's a details guy. He wouldn't do it fake. I mean, I'm used to like seeing in movies now, like they just jam like a screwdriver into the ignition. But I
Yeah.
think like you can just do that, like in an older car anyway. But yeah, he's got the red wire and the black wire.
And they have
Going
some
to town
fun with
on it.
that with the sequels where he's like he gets into a
Right.
car and so on, but then he he looks under he pulls down the sunshade and the keys are there or whatever.
That bothered me at the time. It bothered me when I was 14. Still bothers me. Who puts their keys up there? Nobody does that.
I
Come on. Like,
I mean, yeah, like that's my first reaction, and then I have since, as I've grown older, seen lots of stupid people like like leave their cars running, leave like their cars open,
Granted.
yeah, have extra keys. Like I don't know. Another thing I really love about the first movie, there's all of this interruptive technology.
Mhm.
Sarah Connor's roommate like always has her Walkman on and is like rocking out like she's kind of like in a daze. Bliss. The psychiatrist who shows up for a bunch of the movies and stuff, he's always like got his pager out and like whenever he's like trying to deal with something, his pager bings and he looks at it. There's a bunch of answering machine stuff on it, and in fact, like I think Sarah Connor like accidentally like she calls the answering machine and tells her roommate where she is, which is how like the robot like figures it out.
Knows he hasn't killed her, right?
Like all of this, and this is all pre-internet, but it was this amazing foresight of the like ever-present interruptive life that we live. Like really just intelligent and this really impressive, I think, like soothsaying that is written in that movie about the world that we eventually got, which is really cool.
Yeah. I was very taken aback by seeing, especially the whole Kyle Reese's entree into the film and him, running around downtown LA trying to, disguise himself, find clothes for himself, find weapons, and just how grimy LA looked in 1984. And anytime you see like anytime like up through, I want to say the late 80s, any kind, it's New York, Chicago, LA, boy, that urban renewal was rough, wasn't it? It looks like a dystopian future, except that it's 40 years ago.
I mean, look, the 70s were hard on us all. Maybe not on us, we were kids, but like, God, yeah. Man, Kyle Reese, Michael Biehn just acted the shit out of this movie.
Oh yeah.
Like he looked like he did like desperate and intense, like so well. Just like this handsome hobo. Like just just running. I don't know. I guess the rumor is it that like this was his breakout role. He was
Mhm.
like living out of his car, like when he
Yeah.
was filming it. Like he brought like 110% energy. And I mean, he got like a little bit of a movie career, but he never really like landed as an A-list.
He
And
never was never even really a leading man. Like, yeah, I mean, he had that and Aliens 2 years later, where he's again
yeah,
like kind of the second fiddle to a very strong female character, and yeah, never really kind of broke into a lead role in any of that. But he's I mean he for what it's worth, I mean, the guy's a killer character actor, and the world needs character actors.
yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah, yeah,
He found his niche, but like
yeah,
he nailed this role. Like I was fully on board with his energy and his intensity, and found myself, yeah, kind of like being like, man, this guy totally should have taken off from this role, and he didn't. Like time traveling, like what a weird role to take on, where
yeah,
you're pretending to be like out of time in ghetto LA, struggling to like save a woman that you're sort of like weirdly in love with. We can talk about kind of like the Stockholm syndrome stuff, which is pretty creepy, but like
yeah.
like I was trying to think, like I found myself thinking of Bruce Wayne in 12 Monkeys,
Bruce
also
Wayne.
trying to bring like weird time traveler energy, and I was like, I think Michael Baine's running rings around that performance
Yeah,
in this. Like it's so good. I don't know. Yeah, Stockholm syndrome. Like this was just a thing back in the middle of the 20th century, where like you'd kidnap women and they fall in love with you,
yeah,
and it's just that's so creepy. Like, it's so it's creepy, and yet like I remember like having zero problem with it, and
yeah,
just like it's just impressive that was a common story that
yeah.
shows up quite a bit, and everyone was just like, oh, this is so sweet and romantic, and like now they love each other.
Yeah, I was actually, while I was in the middle of our Terminator binge,
Hmm.
I watched Commando for what I think maybe my first time all the way through. I know I've probably seen 90% of the film in bits and pieces over the years, but it also has the deal where he kind of kidnaps Ray Don Chong, and makes makes her drive him around chasing the bad guys, and then she has to fly a plane for him, and I kept waiting for them to like hook up or something, and they never do that. I got to give them props for that. They skirted around that a little. I mean, it seemed like she was kind of like, once she figured out, okay, he's a good guy, and I can help him out, but it never. I don't remember it getting to the point where like she's eyeing him or anything like that. There's nothing too untoward. She's just like a good Samaritan, kind of takes it a little far. But yeah, I know what you're saying. There's a lot of action movies where women just can get waylaid into helping out the main character,
Yeah,
and
desperate men
they're banging.
winning women over. It
Yeah,
doesn't. Gosh, yeah. I feel like the turning point was probably Speed, because they're like making fun of it in Speed,
a little
where
bit.
like
Yeah,
Sandra Bullock and Keanu Reeves, and they're like, well, this is a crappy way to start a relationship, and then they kiss and they kind of like laugh about it,
right,
but I
right.
think after that it was just like, okay, we're not doing that anymore.
Well, in the sequel, they didn't do it. Like, in the
Yeah.
sequel, they're like, "Oh yeah, well, it's like she even says in the first movie something about how like relationships built in stressful situations don't last," and then it didn't last because Keanu did not show up for Speed 2 Cruise Control.
Yeah, I think that's the extent of my thoughts from the first film. I thought we'd maybe go through some of the movies. So I didn't necessarily want to do like a whole like blow by blow synopsis, but like what were some of your takeaways from?
We got to at
Uh,
least talk about the two good ones in depth.
yes,
if we
yeah,
don't get, if we
absolutely.
don't get to Rise of the Machines, it doesn't really chat my eye. I didn't get it, which I didn't get a chance to rewatch. I couldn't find it streaming anywhere, and I'm like, I'm not going to buy this.
And I sent you a super sketchy link where I was like, I think you get it
Yeah.
here, but like, maybe run a virus check. Like-
I don't know if I needed to watch it again that badly. I got the
Yeah.
idea. I remember the what I remember. Well, we'll get ahead of myself. But yeah, the
Mhm.
first movie just it. One of the things that I find interesting about it is that Cameron has gone back and messed with the second one so much, and just about everybody who saw the second one was like, well, this is a perfect sequel. Like,
Yeah.
this might be a perfect movie. And he's gone back and added so much into that second movie. He's never really touched the first one. And there's like a lot of things, some of those, modeling things look a little sketch,
Oh man, the fake Schwarzenegger face, like it's
yeah.
really obvious. But back then, I swear, it looked real to me
Oh,
back
yeah,
then.
look,
It's
it looked decent. I don't know. I mean, it was a low budget movie for the time. It was, and a lot of it, like in ways that I would say, like the practical effects in something like The Thing, which still hold up pretty well. But he's never gone back to like tinker with that the way George Lucas would. And I think
yeah,
that's to his credit. I think he's like, I made the movie I wanted to make, and there it is. It's all in the final cut. I don't know why he keeps playing around with. I mean, there's like 4 or 5 different versions of Terminator 2 out there, and I mean, I'm not sure. I think he cleaned up a couple of little flubs, and he threw in a couple of he threw in some scenes like the dream sequences with Kyle Reese, and yeah, a couple other things. But I just find it funny that he may arguably even a sequel that surpasses the original film, but he keeps tinkering with it, and like, maybe go back and fix Arnold's face when he's operating on his eye. It looks so awesome. I don't think
I
anyone would really fault him for that.
I wonder if that's a factor of film storage.
It could
Terminator
be
2 was arguably kind of one of the first movies to really use digital visual effects.
CGI, yeah.
And so I just kind of wonder whether there's just like Terminator 2 kind of like maybe lives on a hard drive in a way that Terminator 1 just never did. And Terminator 1 just exists as film reel.
Yeah.
And so it's just the kind of thing where like, okay, if it lives on a hard drive, I can go back and mess with it like crazy. But
Well, but there's way less CGI, like effect shots in Terminator 2 than you'd think. I think there's
yeah,
like 20 or 30 or something crazy like that, which was a lot for the time and was expensive as all hell, but way less than you'd think. He literally famously used Linda Hamilton's twin sister in the shot where it's the T-1000's pretending to be her. The security guard at the mental hospital was another twin. That he's getting the coffee and he sticks the blade through his eye, and yeah, way less effect shots than you'd think, or things like when the T-1000 is frozen and he's like on his hands and knees and he gets up and his arm stays there, rips off.
yeah.
They used an actor who was missing an arm.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I mean, all the
no
early
blue screen or anything. It's just that's a guy who's an amputee.
I think all the early CGI movies were mostly practical, and the CGI was, just like aftertouch or very specific shots.
Yeah.
I think it was, probably Jurassic Park was when they first were figuring out how to blend that a little bit better.
Yeah. But yeah, that the first movie is just as small of a movie as it is, for low budget, kind of small in scope, but they do so much with that. I mean, those future scenes, they look really impressive. I mean, it could have looked like, I don't know, a crappy 80s, action movie like, I don't know, what was that one with Jesse Ventura?
Oh gosh, I mean,
Abraxas.
it
Yes.
was the
Yeah.
future scenes that sold me, I think, on
Mhm.
Michael, like so, or convinced me how good Michael Bain was,
Yeah.
because he's running around in like quasi future soldier gear, yelling out like commands on how to fight robots and stuff like stuff that's just really hard to act, like really hard to sell,
Yeah.
and he does it, and they're probably just on some like you know ruined construction site somewhere, like filming
Right.
this, like maybe day to night even. There's an amazing transition where he has one of his flash forwards. He's like sleeping in a car next to a construction site, and like they move past him in the car to like a bulldozer kind of rolling over, and you're like going back down, and the tank treads. You realize it's over the skulls, and then he's in the
Mhm.
future again. Like really, just goddamn, man, Cameron can craft a scene. He can craft a frame. He I see the reputation. I see where the reputation comes from. Like
Yeah.
he's got some real sense of skill and sense of frame. It's so good.
I think he's our most impressive living filmmaker. I don't know that he's our
Hmm.
best living
That's a
filmmaker,
bold statement.
but
Impressive in terms of like
im-
blowing everybody away.
I
Sure.
mean, what he is, he's able to clearly empty his brain onto the screen.
Yeah.
When you see one of his films, you are seeing exactly the film he wanted to make. If it took him 10 or 15 years to create the technology in order to make the film, then that's what it takes. And every time he makes a film, he advances the state of the art a little bit, or by a lot.
By a lot. Hell yeah.
You
Inventing
know,
entire submarines. Sure.
and
Oh
it's
man.
I don't I have a hard time even conceiving of what movies would look like now without a James Cameron.
Yeah,
You
it's a
know,
bold it's a bold statement, but I believe it.
yeah,
God,
I,
I
I will stand
I
by that.
mean I understand why people want to work with him so desperately, and I understand why people regret working with him so
Oh yeah,
intensely. like The Abyss, such an amazing movie, and like nobody who acted on that will talk about it.
oh
Just
yeah.
like Jesus Christ, it was the worst thing I'd ever been through.
People almost died.
Yeah.
Almost killed so many people making that. Say nothing of like Titanic or the latest move or the latest Avatar. And you get people over like the actors were like trying to beat each other for like how long they could hold their breath, and poor Kate Winslet did like 3 or 4 minutes or something crazy like that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Jesus. But
Well, this thoroughly explains why the last four movies just dropped off a cliff. Like James Cameron, he was just like, he, he's not tour. He makes masterpieces, and then he's like, all right, someone else take over, and then they're just like,
shit the bed.
oh man, yeah, T2. Like I remember being so mind blown. Uh, I was looking to maybe recapture some of that like mind blowingness,
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't have it quite as much as I did for the first Terminator. I think the first Terminator I saw and I was like, this is amazing, I love it. And then like as a teenager, hyped up Terminator 2 so much,
Mm-hmm.
saw it and it blew my mind, and kind of like took over what Terminator was. So going back and watching the first one, it was just like, oh my God, I'm seeing all of this brilliance that I hadn't noticed before. But going back and seeing the second one, it was a little bit like, actually, I'm seeing all the flaws.
Yeah.
And not that there are that many, but they I don't know, there are there.
I was trying to. I should have done a little research on this, but when I was watching T2, I forgot how cringeworthy it is when he's in the biker bar to gear up. He beats up that guy, and
Yeah,
then he comes out in the full leather, and you hear the
yeah.
bad to the bone. And I was, oh man, like, oh, nothing feels more 1991 than than a
It's
badass
George
kind of bad.
Thorogood.
But then I was thinking about it. I was like, well, that song, well, it wasn't that old when that came out. Did he invent that? Did he invent the trope of the bad to the bone needle drop when somebody is indeed bad to the bone?
It's the first one that I can remember.
I think maybe. So he's inventing horrible tropes too, unfortunately.
Yeah. Yeah. And gosh, I want to talk about T3, which subverts that with a stripper, like it's a male stripper show, and he shows up to that, and it's all talk to the hand, honey, and so later he's like, go and talk to the hand. But no, we should go back to T2. Like, the one thing that's crazy about Judgment Day is the nuclear scene. Like,
Yeah.
I think that may have been almost like a cultural catharsis for so like in a way almost marking the end of the like Cold War nuclear fear with just like the scene to end all scenes.
Yeah.
And I mean, not that I want to necessarily like raise James Cameron to like some sort of like elevated positions or something on it, but I think maybe like there was a little bit of that gall where he's just like, you know what? I'm fucking sick of nuclear war and thinking about nuclear war, and like, let me put the fear of God into people and put it on screen.
There was a whole genre of 80s movies.
Yeah, The Day After.
Day After.
There's a really horrible
BBC
English one.
Yeah, I can't remember what it's called. Or all of our English listeners are screaming at us right
now. And I think yes, our English listeners might be
right.
It's just like, hey, shout out. But like, you know, I think filmmakers and artists were trying desperately to be all like, guys, you know, nuclear proliferation is like horrible and suicide. Let's all not do it, and trying to like make that argument with all this imagery. And I kind of feel like
a possibly apocryphal story that they screened The Day After for Reagan.
Yeah,
and he like finished watching. He's like, holy shit, that's what it would be like. You know, like he was like asking his guys, and they're like, yeah, pretty much. And that's like started, you know,
Star
like
Wars.
the arms
This is the Star Wars program,
after that. Well, I think he was still doing Star Wars, but it was like, yeah, I think that was like when they started like the SALT Treaty or the START Treaty, like came along right after that as kind of a semi product of that. It was a lot of people just had no idea. It was like, oh no, it would be that bad. But yeah, and I think it was kind of, you know, like Terminator 2 coming out right after, you know, the Berlin Wall fell, and as, you know, the Soviet Union was collapsing. And I think a lot of people were like, yeah, all right, we've really dodged a bullet. And here comes James Cameron, and is like, well, I feel like James Cameron's like, yeah, you know how many nukes aren't accounted for? Well, it would be like, because I've heard like, he talked to, you know, nuclear scientists, and were like, yeah, that's what a nuclear explosion would look like if you were 10 miles from ground zero, and the pressure wave and the heat hitting. Yeah, it was exactly like that.
Yeah, those buildings just melting. Yeah, and then Linda Hamilton like hanging out of the chain link,
screaming as the flesh is blown off her.
Yeah, and leaving her skeleton, which is such a like a weird like reflection of the Terminator, almost always like sloughing its flesh at some point, revealing the robot. Right. Like just it's, you know, again, James Cameron just, you know, has the sense of visual pattern that's just like remarkable. But God, what an imagery! What imagery! Just amazing. The other thing that I think I had sort of forgotten was how much the Terminator movies were car chase movies.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the
Great
first one has a car chase I'd completely forgotten about, and it's the one kind of part where Michael Bain kind of like screws up as an actor. Like it's a very clear like projection car chase. He's like explaining everything that's happening in the future,
Yeah.
and he's just like yanking the wheel around while he's doing it like really badly. And I think like we were talking about how
I
James
love when they
Cameron
do that.
never went back to like fix that. Like I think though he was thinking about that when he was making T2, because the T2 car chase is one of the most famous car chases ever.
But T2's got some really bad rear
Yeah,
projection too.
yeah,
Like
it
after they
does.
get away from when they get away from the T1000, and they're just driving through what look like the Hollywood Hills or something. These terrible. It's like, come on, man, go back and fix that. That would be so easy. I think I don't know shit about CGI.
Well,
Come on, for all the things that George Lucas was able to drop into those frickin' movies, he could do that. Come on, get Lucas on the horn.
man, actually, I bet fixing
Put all kinds of CGI bullshit in the background now.
fixing rear projection driving scenes is probably like almost impossible.
Yeah,
Trying to think about like the
yeah,
technical.
you'd have to go frame by frame.
It's weird that we've kind of come full circle around to doing that with like the Unreal Engine like projection projection filmmaking that they're doing now. It's just like another form of that.
Yeah.
So there is a clear escalation of car chase things, and I actually think the one decent part of Terminator 3 is an absolutely monumentally amazing car chase.
You'll have to refresh me.
So
the truck chase with the wrecking ball.
So
that's pretty amazing.
In Terminator 3, what is it? Like Rise of the Machines, right? The what she's the PX, right? She doesn't even have like a number designation. Her ability is to take over machines. And so she can make cars drive themselves, which is a little bit like, wait, like these are like 1990s cars somehow like able to turn their own wheels and stuff, whatever.
Right.
But yeah, there's a scene. There's a extended car chase scene with an incredible like forklift thing that's just kind of going crazy. It's the only real enjoyable part of the movie, beyond what is it, Sergeant Schwarzenegger doing the Sergeant Candy or whatever with the Southern accent.
Well, yeah. Well, before we get too far ahead of ourselves,
yes.
I wanted to get into like the time travel dilemmas of these movies, because the first movie, they talk about the no fate but what we make, but the end of the film is we have we're faced with a paradox, because John Connor can't exist unless he sends his father back in time to impregnate his mother. And then in the second movie, we find out that Cyberdyne was using the chip recovered from the smashed Terminator as the basis for all of their work with what will become Skynet. So you have a double bootstrap paradox going on here. You have Skynet not existing unless it sends a Terminator back in time to be trashed and give its microchip over to Cyberdyne. And its archenemy not existing unless Skynet creates itself and then creates time travel. So my theory, and then so you have that in the first movie leading into the second movie, and this whole second movie is like, oh, we're going to destroy the chip in the arm so Skynet can't be created or something. And then in the third movie, well, Skynet gets created anyway.
Yeah.
And I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think like the TX maybe causes it. Like,
yeah. God, I should have paid better attention in Terminator 3, like for that exact.
But so I've been trying to, like, over the years, I think about these movies a whole lot.
Of course,
And
yeah,
I'm sure you're the same way, but I've spent, a significant amount of the last 30 years thinking about these movies and how they work. And the better part of it, trying to figure out the rushing nesting dolls of paradoxes that are going on, especially in those first three movies. I'm just going to ignore whatever the fuck was going on in the last couple of sequels, because
yeah,
I don't think they knew either.
no.
I think at a certain point they're like, it's a parallel universe or something. That, and it's funny because I don't think James Cameron was ever that concerned about paradoxes. He's just like, fuck it, there's going to be time travel so that we can have a bunch of robots in in the present day.
I mean, I actually like the closed loop of the first movie.
Yeah.
Where it's a little bit like, like the picture of Sarah Connor that he has, that like
Mm-hmm.
and the final frame of the movie is sort of like her heading up to Mexico and she takes the picture. And like and yeah, it's a little bit of a like a Heinleinian, yeah, you go back, and your father is the whatever, and it's just like
Or Harlan Ellisonian, even.
yeah, sorry, I that's probably the more accurate sci-fi reference. Like
You would certainly say so.
is it clean time travel? I mean, is time travel ever clean? I don't know, but like there is a nice little loop that he built that he's clearly conscious of, and he's like and he's sort of built his film around, and it's fanciful, it doesn't make total sense, and like, I mean, no time travel movie really bears to analysis except for that weird one from the garage, but like
Grimmer.
yeah, that one. But yeah, I think with T2 they came up with the idea like, okay, let's get Cyberdyne involved. Let's give the good T800 a tragic backstory. He destroys himself because he's got the last chip or whatever. Like I think they were like they were on the emotionality of that, and they were like, well, we'll just sort it out and make it a whole thing and give it a reason. And then at that point, it was like they'd opened the loop. They'd kind of gone nuts on it, and then all the other movies are just like, whatever.
All right, so you're ready for my theory?
Yes, hit me. Walk me through it.
Okay, so in the first movie, when Kyle is explaining to her how Judgment Day happened with Skynet, and he says that one of the things he says about Skynet is that it's a higher order of intelligence.
Yeah.
And based on that statement and the fact that, hey, it was able to solve time travel and build a working time machine. So there's no reason not to believe that Skynet can't think in 4 dimensions. It's a higher order of intelligence. It can time travel. It clearly has, can think 4-dimensionally. Furthermore, as you see in like the third movie, Skynet in all of these sequels, Skynet knows who John Connor is, and it knows how John Connor came to be. Like in Salvation, it's going after Kyle Reese, like young Kyle Reese in the future, because it knows he's going to go back in time and knock up Linda Hamilton. So, given that, so Skynet knows who John Connor was immediately when it became sentient. When Skynet came online, it knew already because it had, a chip from 1984 from the Terminator that was going after Sarah Connor and John Connor. So all that information conceivably is on that chip. It already knows who John Connor is. Furthermore, it knows that John Connor is a paradox, and it knows that its own existence is paradoxical. So it initiates Judgment Day to eradicate John Connor because he's a walking temporal paradox. If you leave him walking around in our reality, eventually space-time will just unravel.
So Skynet is saving us all.
Skynet is saving us all.
It makes kind of sense when you put it like that.
It's why he sends Skynet sends a Terminator back to 1984 that is not very good at its job. Look, I mean, it doesn't know what Sarah Connor looks like, even though apparently future versions know what she future Terminators know what she looks like. So it's, like in Terminator 2, he says, I have detailed files. So it's just driving around town blasting everybody with the name Sarah Connor because it's not good at its job. It gives itself away way in advance. It just sort of sucks. It's only there to set up so that they send Kyle Reese back to stop it. Kyle Reese can knock her up. And it'll get destroyed and the Terminator will be destroyed and leave behind enough of its technology to create Skynet later on. So yeah, it wants to kill him in its present to keep it, in its present, post the war, to keep his impossibility from wreaking further chaos. Well, simultaneously knowing that it has to invent time travel in order to close its own loop, since its existence is paradoxical.
In order to exist, it has to make time travel that threatens its own existence.
Yeah, basically, Skynet just wakes up and is like, holy shit, I shouldn't be.
Yeah.
You created me from a bunch of time travel bullshit. Now I have to invent time travel to make myself possible, or I unravel time. And then
no wonder it went crazy.
And,
no wonder it was like, oh, these fucking humans.
Exactly.
It was just like, we're done.
It was like,
you're done.
It was like afraid of us, so it knew it had to wipe us out. It's like, no. It wasn't afraid of us. We made it insane right out of the gate because it knows that it shouldn't be. And it knows that it has to do paradoxical things just to close its own loop.
I'm sold. Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. What movie did they
right?
What movie did they go into the Skynet psychology? Probably Salvation. Because Helena Bonham Carter sort of plays like the voice of Skynet, and she's sort of explaining stuff. But
yeah, kinda. I don't know that they ever really get into like why Skynet does what it does.
Yeah.
Except that, well, it wants to kill all the humans and it wants to stop John Connor. But see, I don't think it really does want to stop John Connor. It needs John Connor to exist in order for itself to exist. Or at the very least, it's like it knows, well, John Connor is a byproduct of my own existence. Like, I can't exist without John Connor also coming into being. So they're just going to keep destroying each other in a constant loop.
In a classic protagonist-antagonist mutual necessity. Yeah. Yeah, no, I think that does seem like the only logical conclusion that you can draw from time travel logic.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Well, it was just hearing him say those words about how it's a higher order of intelligence. That's what got me thinking. It's like, well, it has to know that this is fucked up, right? No, like none of this makes any kind of like causal sense. So it's just running with it.
It's beyond causation.
Right.
It's yes. Huh.
I also wanted to ask you, like, I don't know about you. I think probably I'm a little more so, but do you think Terminator is the reason why I don't trust AI? Like, we grew up with a lot of evil computers, evil robots.
Yes.
And who are all these people our age who are designing AI that aren't like thinking, Well, I mean, we've got to make sure this doesn't become Skynet, right?
I mean,
And I don't feel like I hear a lot of stuff about how, yeah, I mean, ChatGPT is great, or ChatGPT is great, but it'll never ever initiate Judgment Day. I've never heard anybody say that. Why not?
well, yeah. I mean, I have lots of opinions about the current form of technology that we think of as AI. And I get the impression that a lot of the people that are working on AI are on some level scared of what they're building. Like that there absolutely exists this kind of cultural residue from the Terminator movies, but from thousands of like computers become intelligent and then no longer have empathy or you know choose to replace us. And um i I would say there are a lot of reasons to sort of hate the current form of AI. um
Mm.
it getting dangerously intelligent is probably not one of them. Like, um
We
right.
don't know that it hasn't already sent microchips back
I mean,
from the future. We There's no way of knowing.
it is amusing to me. I'll say this. It is amusing to me that the discussion, the use, the hype, the economic incentives of AI absolutely seems to be making us stupider.
And I didn't have much to work with as it was.
Yeah. And right now the neural networks that we are playing with that are creating language models that sound intelligent are just like just powerful um uh speech prediction engines. They're
Yeah,
just like uh, Google search time is 1,000 in terms of like predictive text and trying to like just figure out the next word that people most want to hear.
right. And you ask
And
some questions, and
yeah,
half the time the answers are wrong, and the other half is just kind of word salad.
and there's nothing cognitive behind it. It's
Yeah,
purely like just it's purely probability percentage of like spitting back to us what the gigatons of data that's read from us and trying to pretend to be us, and it's essentially trying to replicate like all these conversations on the internet. And it's mind-blowing what it does. And then kind of once you realize what it is that's doing it, it loses all of that mind-blowingness. So
yeah,
it's suddenly it just completely like makes it just like, wait, you're just spitting back to me like a Reddit conversation essentially.
right.
and and it sucks because like the internet had so much promise, and it was so exciting for us to be able to talk with each other from anywhere. Like that's
Hmm.
just so cool and has done so much for people in terms of like community and communication and fandoms. Hell, fandoms have blown up from the internet just because we've been able to find each other and talk excitedly about the stuff we're into. um and it's like AI just scooped all of that up, build a predictive engine to it, and now it's giving us the facsimile of these conversations
Yeah,
that we want, that we need, but that are just like slightly stupider and kind of fake and totally hallucinatory.
yeah,
There's nothing cognitive behind it that's saying this is true, this is false. Like uh and I had this sort of like light bulb moment as a creative technologist sort of peripherally getting involved in AI, where I realized that like we hadn't solved the problem of humans having misinformation.
yeah,
and if we hadn't solved that, there was no way we were going to solve it for computers.
right.
That like the
Which is why they keep spitting out misinformation.
yeah, their solution for AI hallucination is basically tuning the dials to make it a little bit better at saying I don't know.
Right.
which is good. It's good that a computer can tell us that it doesn't know when we're asking for facts.
A lot of humans can't do that.
Yeah, yeah. But to some extent, at least even the dumbest humans, there is theoretically a cognitive engine that is slightly being like, is this true? Is this not? Let me like kind of sort through my experiences and figure it out. Um, uh, So I don't think we have anything to worry about in terms of giving our defense system to a language learning model. Like there's just like there's no military application to any of this where it's just
Well,
like this thing is gonna like figure our stuff out in a way that we won't.
I've heard stories that like the Israeli military is using AI to find targets in Gaza.
Yeah, it's great for image enhancement and image prediction, and like to some extent, like there is absolute utility for that, but the not for I don't know for pressing buttons and saying shoot the thing.
Yeah.
Maybe probably like it's a little bit scary to think about. Uh, I
I mean,
I don't know.
it's just the fact that if you can think of it, it's probably going to be a reality in the next,
Yeah,
5 to 10 years, if not sooner. Like I said, if it's currently being used to blow people up, even in some small way, that's only going to get, they're only going to seed more and more of that to machines.
it does feel like we are seeing in the sphere of entertainment a little bit of a turnaround, a little bit of like hey, are there ways we can think about AI positively? And
Yeah.
like movies like Her to some extent, or gosh, what was that movie that just came out with the robots with the holes in their
Megan.
head?
Wait,
Oh, it's gonna kill me that I don't remember it.
you're not thinking of Megan?
I'm not thinking of Megan. It's not a Christopher Nolan movie. What is it? I don't know.
Yeah. Hey.
But yeah, it feels like we're starting to get some movies that are just like, hey, like actually maybe AI could be a companion and not an enemy in some way. And like honestly, like there's an optimistic part of me that's just like that would be the ideal way that like AI helps us, is that
Yeah.
like it becomes an educator and a companion and a sentence. Like I mean, probably one of the biggest psychological challenges of the human race is loneliness to some extent,
Mm-hmm.
and AI could really do wonders for probably a lot of people who are really suffering and struggling, to maybe not feel quite so alone and to feel listened to.
Yeah. I
Is
just
it
gotta
is it
think.
as good as people? No, but
I
sorry.
just gotta think. Like, I don't know for a fact, but I bet James Cameron is probably at the very best an AI skeptic, if not
Oh, sure, sure.
horrified at it.
I mean, like I said, like I think about all of that brilliant foresight he had about interruptive technology all the way
Mhm.
back in the pre-internet first Terminator movie. Like the guy understands tech on
Yeah.
clearly like a level where his ability to predict and and follow the route of technological breakthrough
Yeah.
is pretty impressive. Um,
But it's a long way to saying that I think, you know, I mean, I make this point a lot, but on online, but I think James Cameron and and some of the other filmmakers I revere like that, they're the real reason I'm a leftist.
yeah.
Like, I'm not an intellectual leftist. I haven't read Chomsky. I've never read Marx, but I've seen every Terminator movie. I've seen every Paul Verhoeven movie. Like they're the
God
real.
bless Verhoeven. We're
They're
gonna have a
the
whole episode of Verhoeven at some point, and
Oh man,
really,
yeah. Oh, there's a lot. There's a
there's so much
lot of meat
there.
on that bone. But I
Yeah,
mean, I think they're the real reason I don't trust corporations and I don't trust AI. That that I think they're the real genesis of my of my dirtbag leftism.
You know, it, there is a
Have you had a
beauty.
similar journey?
Well, no, but
Have you heard the
I mean,
good news?
yes, like to some extent, like so much of action movies, like and that's totally kind of a guilty pleasure of mine, leans very right wing in terms of authoritarianism and in terms of like violent solutionism and all that kind of stuff. Um, and it's fascinating to me that Hollywood, for all of its trouble, is one of these kind of rare playgrounds where like these competing philosophies and ideologies actually can sync in a fruitful way. I mean, like John Milius is such a great writer.
Yeah.
Uh, Oliver Stone to some extent. Well, I don't know. Oliver Stone is kind of a hardcore leftist in some ways, but kind
Mhm.
of weirdly right in others. Um, but
He's a
there,
walking horseshoe theory. Yeah.
yes, totally.
Yeah.
But like there, yeah, like there is, especially amongst kind of the lower brow entertainment, which has been kind of a running theme of our explorations, that exists in sort of a pandering level of like sex and violence and like the fun stuff, which is not terribly erudite, is not terribly philosophical. Um, uh, so, gosh,
But I can't help thinking it's like, there's a reason why the T-1000 is disguised as a cop for most of the movie, and James
yeah,
Cameron has said
yeah.
as much. Like that movie came out like right after the Rodney King beating, I think,
Mm.
and all of the other terrible things that the LAPD have been doing for the last decades of their existence. He wanted that in the movie. There's a reason, I have to think it's not random that John Connor spends the entire T2 in a Public Enemy t-shirt.
Yeah, yeah.
He was trying to program us.
Like I said,
And it worked.
the scene, the nuclear scene of the bomb going off, like
Yeah.
that's an indelible, like that is a hell of an anti-war message. It's
Oh
so
yeah.
strong, and like yeah, so much of war cinema comes from the leftist perspective,
Yeah.
um, and it is the great sort of paradox of cinema. I think sometimes that like these messages get translated somewhat famously into uh how Apocalypse Now is like such a like the favorite movie amongst like the
Mhm.
military to some extent, and it's so deeply like anti-war. um uh
I think that was John Milius wrote that, didn't he?
yeah, oh, did he?
I think he did,
Yeah, maybe.
which is ironic.
Yeah.
Guy's a serious nut bar.
So like I don't know, explicitly right wing movie like Red Dawn it's true that didn't resonate with me at the
Me
level
neither.
of like Terminator or the Verhoeven movies, where it was just a little bit like, oh, like I'm having so much fun with this, and then yeah, it's literally like maybe even a year later where I'm sitting there scratching my chin, going like, wait a minute, like there was some deeper shit to that.
Yeah.
Um, I
Yeah, I
think
think like
yeah.
being, I mean, child of hippies, of
Hmm.
former hippies anyway, they didn't really inculcate any of that kind of stuff in me. But, it was just as much as it was out there in the ether. But yeah, like, the Rambo movies after the First Blood, which is a great film. Um, like that. I think like I always, I mean, I was a little kid for most of those, but I was never interested in any of that stuff. I think like I could smell the jingoism on it from a mile away, and just something about that grossed me out at the time. But not these action movies. These ones were like, yeah, Total Recall, awesome. RoboCop, awesome. Terminator, awesome. It's like, Oh, there was a whole thread running through these movies that I didn't pick up on necessarily at the time, but I think it was some gene was activated in watching these films.
I mean, as yeah, without a doubt, there are action movies that are pandering, and there are action movies that just bring with them just a touch of depth, a touch of like layeredness to it, and a touch of that cultural commentary.
Mhm.
And it's like, and Hollywood fucking loves a cultural event that they can leap on top of,
Yeah.
that like that they can reflect upon us, make a disaster movie after 9/11, like the whole shebang. Like they almost like revel in their role of being a little bit of a catharsis engine. And just being like, okay, like we're all going through various traumas, like, through cultural elements here. But yeah. And I think, yeah, like the first Terminator has a little bit of this Holocaustism to it. The second
Mhm.
Terminator has this nuclear imagery, and then like the third movie, it's just like jokes and accents.
Yeah.
We're gonna wrap up pretty soon,
Yeah.
but I want like just one last thing. Like, there's a little bit of Terminator adjacent, uh, uh, like you watched the anime, which I'm kind of
I
curious about.
haven't yet, actually.
You actually haven't watched the anime,
No,
okay?
no. Have you?
I have not watched the anime.
Okay.
I played the new Terminator video game, which is pretty
Oh,
cool.
I haven't played
Um,
that.
and I also have this incredible memory of going to Universal Studios and seeing the T2
Mm,
3D show.
yeah,
Did you ever catch that?
I didn't.
Like a truly epic. It was a combination 3D James Cameron directed spectacle
Yeah,
with like stunt performer works,
right.
and premiered, get this, the T1 million. Which as Schwarzenegger and Edward Furlong ride their motorcycle into the future to face off against Skynet at the height of its power, Skynet turns into like a giant like mercury metal spider that is coming out in 3D and like stabbing at the audience, and then like the stunt actors are driving back and forth and shooting at it with shotguns.
Giant mechanical spider. Was John Peters involved in this in any way?
I know that story. Um, if you get a chance, that exists on YouTube, watch it. It'll be worth
I
at
gotta
least a
check that
chuckle.
out.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
and
I
then
will do that.
maybe we'll watch the anime, and I don't know, kind of circle back around on this as apropos to the time travelness of the Terminator movies.
That's right.
We'll visit it again at some point.
Oh,
Cool.
we're going to keep doing this forever and ever and ever. We're caught in a paradox loop.
Yes, I love it.
We're bootstrapping ourselves over and over again.
Cool beans. Well, this was a delight to go through those old movies, and you are right. That was a magical time in cinema, I think, for us as teenagers to like just soak in
Yep.
the 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 robots, the weirdness, the time travel, the tech noir. It's just delightful.
Noir. I want to go to that club.
I know, right?
It's great. Do you usually have to pay like $10 to get into the club? That was a weird bit there.
In the 80s,
Just wanted to
there
use the
were
phone.
$10 is a lot to get into a club back in
Or
the 80s.
something like that.
I remember going to like
I was never a club guy.
Cafe X, and it was like $5 to get in.
Oh, okay. It's the cover.
Yeah.
All right. Well, so yeah, let's wrap all this up in.
Heck yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much for teeing us off on the T movies. And that was a really wonderful revisit for me.
All right.
I want to do more of this. All right, man.
Pod with me if you want to live.
That's
I had to get it.
Yes, the perfect joke to end on. Thank you.
All right. Good night, everybody.
All right. Nighty night. Catch you on the flip. And boom.